welcome to the UF Center for Arts and Medicine's Path to Practice session for today. We're going to talk about arts and health careers supporting military service members, veterans, and family members. We'll drop a few housekeeping notes in the chat, a little reminders there, as well as our panelist bios, because we're going to dive in quick. I encourage you to share where you're joining from today in the chat. And then I'm going to turn things over to our moderator for today, Heather Spooner.
Great. Thanks, Michelle, and welcome everybody. We're going to be doing a panel on arts and health in the military. And when we're talking about arts and health, we're talking about really all the ways that the arts can enhance our health, our well-being, and our quality of life. This is different from the creative arts therapies, where you have certified professionals who use the arts for therapy. This is really a range of arts and health professionals coming from many different fields, using a variety of arts disciplines, and working across a range of healthcare and community settings. So today, the focus of this panel is specifically on how the arts support health, well-being, and quality of life for service members, veterans, their families, and their communities. And it's work that I myself am actively involved in, and many of the people on this panel I've known and worked with for some time. So I'm really excited for all of you to hear about some of their amazing work. And we're going to kick off just with that. So panelists, I'm going to have you go through one at a time and just talk a bit about what you do, particularly your connection to service members, veterans, and their families. And I'll just start with the order on my screen. Moira, if you'd be willing to go first, and then you can popcorn from there.
I would be more than happy to. Thank you, Heather. And it is a pleasure to be here. So I am actually a retired Nurse Corps officer with the U.S. Public Health Service. I served 30 years in uniform. My last duty stations were National Naval Medical Center and then Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. I am currently the co-executive director of the PHS Music Ensemble. I'm also on the board of the National Organization for Arts and Health. And I work with veterans all day long, looking for opportunities to share their creativity and self-expression. So if someone wants to do it, I will help them do it. And so I guess I'm popcorning, and the next person on my screen is Bill O'Brien. So I will pass it to Bill.
Bill, you're muted.
Bill.
There I am. Thanks, Moira. I'm Bill O'Brien. Delighted to be here. I'm the Senior Advisor for Innovation and the Director of Creative Forces for the National Endowment for the Arts. Creative Forces is a initiative of the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with the Departments of War or Defense and Veterans Affairs. There's two primary components of the program. We began as a clinical-based program that embeds creative arts therapists in DoD and VA health facilities, VA hospitals, and for active duty, it's primarily in the Intrepid Spirits, the National Intrepid Center of Excellence, and their kind of satellite facilities that focus on TBI and associated psychological health issues. We also have a community engagement program, a national grant program. We're about to announce the 5th round of grantees. We fund between 40 and 50 community-based projects that are, they're also meant to support health and well-being for military-connected populations. They do not involve clinical practice or therapy. It's more about community-based arts engagement that still is intended to support health and well-being. And then the last thing I'll quickly say is that my connection to military goes way back. My dad fought in Korea. He was one of 12 kids, and 9 of them served in the military. So it's been kind of in the air and the water my whole life. And it just adds another, I think for me, a meaningfulness to being able to work with military communities. And I'm thrilled to be here with you folks. I'm going to kick it over to one of our community engagement stars, Fred Johnson. Fred?
Thank you, Bill. Hi, everybody. I'm Fred Johnson, United States Marine Corps veteran and artist in residence and community engagement specialist at the Straz Center for the Performing Arts in Tampa, Florida. Really honored to have been part of the first wave of creative forces which was a wonderful opportunity as a representative from an arts institution working in alignment with the James Haley VA Hospital and many other medical support institutions around the state of Florida, being that next level once a veteran leaves the clinical setting into the community, to be that community partner that can continue to really expand the creative reach that a veteran is introduced to in many instances in the clinical setting. We continue to expand our veteran supportive programs. We have a program that we're really proud of called the Veteran Civilian Arts Ensemble, which creates an opportunity for veterans and their family members and caregivers to engage with members of the civilian community, because of the reality that we live in an all-volunteer military now. There are some unanswered questions by members of our civilian community in terms of how they can provide service and more profoundly understand who they can be and how they can support the reintegration of veterans into the community. Together, they learn about each other, and from their stories, we create an opportunity for the general public to get a sense of how the bridge can be created between those who have gone away to serve and have returned, and those who are home, understanding that. And we also have expanded ourselves into a broader national and international conversation about the importance of arts and health, and are proud to say that the first thread in the tapestry of arts and health for the Straz Center has been the work that we proudly do with our veteran community. So, and I will pass it on to Kimberly.
Hello, it's good to be here. I'm Kimberly Kirklin. I direct the UAB Arts and Medicine program, and we started that as a pilot in 2013, and it was right around the time I graduated from the University of Florida's Master's in Arts and Medicine, and of course, Heather was one of my instructors, but yeah, so we've been doing that work for since then, and our mission is to enhance health and well-being, both in healthcare and community settings through creative expression and engagement. And our work with veterans, prior to arts and medicine, I was involved in community engagement through the arts, and so we would engage with veterans in kind of various ways, but around 2019, we really started having more formal conversations with the Birmingham VA, and then it was in 2022, I believe, when the opportunity for the Creative Forces grant came through, and I said, there's an opportunity. Do you want to partner? They said yes. And so it was the, I believe, 22-23 grant cycle that of the Creative Forces, which enabled us to really launch that initiative. And so that is with in partnership with the Birmingham VA's Whole Health Initiative. And we've been doing in-person and virtual programming with them since that initial funding. And then we also work with our Birmingham Vet Center to do bring weekly in-person work there as well. So happy to be here. And I will popcorn to Fidel.
Thank you, Kimberly. My name is Fidel, and I am the founder and executive director of the American Veteran Arts Collective, or AVAC. We are building workforce pathways that help veterans and military connected families translate their experience into careers across arts, culture, public humanities, museums, and the broader creative economy. My connection to this work is both personal and professional. I'm a Navy veteran, served in the Navy as a Seavey, and before founding AVAC, I spent more than a decade working in fashion, manufacturing, and cultural industries. And over time is that many of the skills I developed in service skills of operation, leadership, adaptability, accountability, working across teams, things that are very much grounded in military culture, were deeply relevant in creative and cultural environments. But that I did not always have the language to explain that connection. So that is the problem that AVEC is trying to solve. We're helping veterans and military families see themselves not only as participants in cultural programs, but as future administrators, as producers, educators, curators, project managers, and leaders within the field.
That's great. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to shift a little bit to just kind of thinking about the culture of working in military connected communities. So for those who may be less familiar with the ways arts and health is employed with military connected families, communities, service members, veterans, and families, what would you like to tell them about the culture of arts and health in these spaces? And Moira, I might start with you again.
Thank you so much. Well, I would first say, people often ask me, I would love to work with veterans. Where can I find them? And I say, well, chances are they're right around you and you don't even know it, right? Because veterans aren't necessarily walking around with a big sign. And when you make that category as expansive as military connected communities, that's actually very large. And so again, I mean, there are more traditional ways, like, to volunteer at the VA or to reach out to, a military treatment facility nearby. But honestly, there are so many military connected people within the community. And it's a wonderful way to get to know the people who, live around you, work around you, play around you. I will say that, one of the unique aspects that Fidel touched on is that military connected communities really are communities. Like they function, they're accustomed to team approaches, and they often respond to opportunities that are not necessarily about them, right? If you make it actually about someone other than the veteran, they will absolutely sign up. They will join, they will be excited. I think it's actually something that is missing in today's society, where people are actually constantly making it about them or feeling the need to be celebrated as an individual. And military connected communities are actually just the opposite, right? It's all mission focused, one team, one fight, let's all do this together. So, when you find opportunities to work with them, they're actually, the opportunities are so rewarding. Yeah, so I will leave an opportunity for others, but thank you.
Thank you for that, Moira. Such great points as well. Bill, is there anything that you would add just kind of about the culture of arts and health with military connected communities?
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting question when it was forwarded by you and Michelle earlier. And it reminded me of an observation early on with Creative Forces. When we think about the culture of the military and the culture of the arts, or culture of arts and health, that I think the kind of quick knee-jerk response is that those things are very different. But I found pretty quickly that there's a common denominator that I could sense in regards to the impulse to serve in the military and the impulse to engage or create art. And it has to do with a very basic desire to connect to something bigger than yourself. And I think that's a very strong sort of impulse at the core of both of those cultures. And we've also seen over time that feeling a sense of being connected to something bigger than yourself is also a very healthy state of mind to be in. And the arts can bring that intentionally as a way to think about who am I in context of who I work with, or what I'm doing and what I've done and what that's done to me, or what the value of that has been. And just to process, a sense of self in connection to larger themes is something that every artist has been doing since Aristotle and before. And I think that's the kind of thing that someone who has raised their hand and said, I'm willing to serve my nation in the deepest way possible, they can connect to that pretty quickly. And I think it's one of the reasons why the arts can present really meaningful ways for military folks to connect with important ideas and to connect with important people.
Thank you, Bill. Absolutely. I'm going to switch over to just thinking about finding opportunities with this work. And Kimberly, why don't we start with you on that one? What would you recommend for someone who's interested in finding some opportunities to work with military connected communities?
Yeah, so for people who are not already in within those circles, Moira mentioned it earlier, but volunteering, I would definitely look to get connected with the VA, your local VA, in terms of volunteering. I would also look at local organizations that specifically support military connected individuals and families and see how you can get involved with those efforts. And also, I would look into local arts-based organizations that are doing work with veterans and military connected populations and just be in those spaces and learn everything you can and see what connections might be made. I'd also say that with our Birmingham VA, they send out a lot of information about community resource fairs and things like that, where a lot of veterans will come. And I would maybe, if it's open to the public, attend some of those and meet some of those organizations there. And yeah, that's what I would do.
Thank you. Fred, is there anything else you wanted to add to finding opportunities that Kimberly may have missed?
Well, it's an interesting thing. I mean, I feel like one of the greatest things is to first and foremost try to be as informed as you can as an individual, because there are a lot of presumptions. I think it's important for us to recognize that people are still living into this concept of especially with veterans, art. I mean, most people don't think of when they think, like, I'll give you a perfect example. Like, we all have trumpets as a background, but my trumpet is the only one that's facing the opposite direction, right? And so that's kind of how it is sometimes when folk are engaged. Like, there's a presumption that I might be tooting a different tune in a different direction. So it's important for us to really try to be informed and to recognize, that the first step might be just in that initial conversation and connection with a veteran, because it's all about how can we best communicate. It's like, or just the willingness. I think one of the things that I learned most profoundly from my colleagues who are music therapists, especially that work with veterans, is that it's oftentimes it's not so much about playing a tune as it is being able to hold the horn. So I think that to enter into, to be really welcome yourself into conversations and engagement with veterans and their families, right? To understand and to get a sense and a feel and to build a sense of trust. So, that's almost the first, before stepping into the experience as an artist, just step into the experience as a neighbor, as a friend, as someone who, wants to know and understand, and then be able to utilize your tool, because it's who you are that builds that sense of trust that might inspire someone who's not necessarily inclined to pick up a crayon and paint, but they'll do it because you've built a trust system. So I think that engagement into the relationship is one of the most important things, because the service that we give as artists to our veterans has to be based upon that space where there's real connection and a real feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Fred. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to Fidel for this next one. And Fidel, I'd love to hear from you what skills and service transfer well into the field of arts and health.
So many more than people often assume. Military sellers develop skills that are extremely relevant to arts and health and cultural work. Skills like leadership and logistics, project management, crisis response, communication, team coordination, adaptability, empathy. But the challenge is that those skills often do not arrive in civilian language when you're working with military communities. A veteran may not say, "I manage complex cross-functional operations under pressure." They may say, "I was responsible for my unit's equipment, timelines, and people." The value is there. The translation is often missing. So when we're thinking about the skills, we should also be thinking about how do we translate and communicate those. That's why I think that this field has an opportunity. Arts in health requires people who can hold complexity, but trust, manage sensitive environments, and work across systems. Earlier, we talked about, I think the recurring theme in some of the responses has been this of identity and belonging, and being able to meet the communities where they are. I think that it is important to understand that for military communities, there may be a common connection to military life, but the experience of a military spouse may be completely different than that of a veteran that served. Military spouses spend a lot of time in the community. They spend a lot of time engaging, programming, and figuring out what is important, what is needed. So there is a lot of overlap, and I think that one of the most important things in figuring out, what skills translate is approaching it with that humble curiosity of like, well, how do we communicate the skills that we know exist already?
That's great. And I might want to hear from just one more person, either direction on this one. So either what skills you think transfer into arts and health, or what the arts offer for military communities. If one of you would just chime in on either one of those questions before we move on.
The second question, what do the arts offer for military connected communities? I think that's a good question to think about in the two areas. For example, the creative forces is active. So on the clinical side, there's some very specific kinds of impacts that we're tracking and that we're investigating in our research. We've had, I think, a little over 40 peer-reviewed research papers, and some of the themes that are coming out of that we're tracking in our strategic planning are things like reduced isolation, improved cognitive ability, emotional processing, positive reframing. So they have a very specific way of aligning with treatment goals for a patient's sort of healing journey in a clinical environment. On the community side, where Fred and Kimberly have partnered with us on some efforts in Florida and Alabama, there's a different special sauce, I guess. And I think we have identified a few aims that we're looking at that include creative expression, that includes understanding others better and feeling better understood, resiliency, snapping back from challenging situations. And I think a big one on the community side is social connection, reduced isolation, meaningful relationships and activities that can enhance people's life. And more we're seeing just about every day some story about rich social connections having such important impact on your longevity and the quality of life. So I think on the community side, there's a lot of that kind of potential benefit.
Yeah, Heather, I think also that one major skill set for someone who wants to be involved in this journey is to be a phenomenal listener. It's really important to listen. As artists, oftentimes we're composing or creating on whatever level. It's important for us to recognize that the journey is really not about us, that, it's our tools, it's our skill set, in alignment with sharing a story or helping to articulate a story. And that's really, really important, is to really come through the process recognizing and really kind of deepening in to understanding what it is that you're hearing, and maybe most importantly, creating the space and the energy so that the veteran can know that they're really being heard, and then you create together, or whatever tools that you employ, whatever creative tools you employ are really foundationally designed to really support that veteran or their family or that active duty personnel as well. So that it really is a question of being a foundational support upon which creativity can really empower that individual or that family.
Absolutely. And where I saw you try to unmute a couple of times, go ahead. Yeah,
I don't know if we have time, but in 2011, right, height of conflict, Walter Reed is unfortunately filled to the brim with combat, blast injured service members coming back. And when we, in conjunction with Americans for the Arts, established the National Initiative for Arts and Health across the military, it was because we realized that these standard, clinical tools, right, the standard of practice was not producing the health outcomes that we needed, right? And it started this idea of like, let's explore what creativity and self-expression, right, as tools for health, what kind of an impact that can have. And I think, as Bill mentioned, the evidence is there, right? So what does arts and health provide? It provides everything. And I'm here at a local university with a ton of veteran artists who are here not because the systems and the pathway was created, but because the internal drive was so strong for them to find it on their own. So I think the question is, how do we create, right, those systems and those processes to ensure that everybody has access and an opportunity for these?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you, Maura. I'm going to switch a little bit now just to thinking about burnout, sustainability, ethics related to this work. And Kimberly, I might start with you. If you could tell us what you think people need to know about sustaining a career in this work, and anything you want to share about kind of the systems involved, whether that's federal or nonprofit, funding, some of those pieces.
Yeah, sure. So first, what I would say is to ensure for example, if you're an individual artist, ensuring that your values are really aligning with the values of the different organizations that you might work with. Really, based on what Fred was saying, that not every artist is appropriate for work in community settings or really in arts and health. And so just ensuring that you can really be present, person-centered, adaptable, so that you can engage in real time and be present. So I would say that would kind of be the first thing for sustainability. And then also just to go into, again, I'm very big into partnerships and collaboration. So I think from an individual artist perspective, really building strong relationships with potential organizations that you may work with and organizations that have a track record for, yes, they can build person-centered, sustainable programs over a long period. And again, collaboration for organizations, listen, learn from other organizations, find out where you can support their work. And I have learned diversify your funding source. So whether you're an individual artist or an organization, really diversify those income sources. So when things shift, you'll be okay. So that's what I would share.
Thank you, Kimberly. How about Fidel? Fidel, is there anything that you would share about the role of individual purpose and sustainability in this work?
Absolutely. So purpose is essential, but purpose alone is not enough. Many people enter the work because they care deeply, and that's beautiful. But if purpose is not supported by boundaries or by systems, by funding, community, people will burn out. So for military connected work, actually, there can be a strong emotional pull. People want to help, and we want people to help. They want to honor service. They want to support healing, but sustainability requires asking, what is mine to carry? What is the institution's responsibility, or what systems need to exist so that the work does not depend only on one individual sacrifice? So I think that the healthiest version of purpose is disciplined contribution. It is knowing why the work matters while building the structure that allows the work to continue.
Go ahead, Fred. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to say, I think one of the most important elements too is um, oftentimes we want so much for other people that we forget about taking care of ourselves. So I think that one of the most important things is self-care. Is that the practices that we want to share with others, it's important for, and I say this to myself, I have to say this all the time, so I'm not, I parrot this because I know it's important, but self-care is a very, very important part of it. Towards the journey of not burning out is to recognize that what I want for another, especially from a creative standpoint of view and a health and wholeness standpoint of view, it's important that you be a pass through for that. So remember to care for yourself, first and foremost.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Fred, for that reminder. And as you said, I think we all need it for sure. I think a lot of you have talked about kind of ways to like build careers and programs around this work, but I'm not sure if I've heard enough about like maybe how to dip a toe in, right? Someone who's intimidated maybe by the idea of like building relationships and programs. What's just a real easy kind of entry point? As faculty here at UF, I'll always say, our graduate program is a great way to do that. And we have internships and practicums and things built in and can help with some of those relationships. So I'll throw in that plug. But aside from that, what all would you recommend for somebody just to kind of dip a toe in or get a taste for this kind of work?
I think I go back to the volunteer piece. I think the volunteerism is really important. I know in my life there's been a number of situations where I think I can do this. I think let me just go try it out and I'll do it for nothing. So, so I think to volunteer, to get your feet wet and go and volunteer and be involved, you'll learn a lot, you'll be in the environment, and you can begin to share some of what you feel, that you can offer. Sometimes it's a great opportunity to fine tune it or just to learn more. So I think volunteering is a fantastic way to really, begin to get your feet wet.
Thank you, Red.
Um,
Right.
I would add, sorry, that I think first of all, not undervaluing what you bring to any setting or any situation. And I also think that, so much of like figuring out who we are is figuring out who we aren't. So, trying things, as Fidel said, right, this humble curiosity, like trying things that you think, you know what, I'm not sure I'm going to like this, but let me try it. And you know what, maybe you're right and maybe you're wrong. And I think from a systems perspective, the truth is like, arts and health is an amazing field, but I think for everyone in general, right, we don't really have like really clear career paths for everyone. So once again, things often start from a military veteran perspective, and then those benefits are shared with everyone. So if this is the same case, that by looking at how we create career paths and opportunities for military connected communities, and then we can share it with everyone, that would be a beautiful thing.
I love that. And I love the idea that you really don't necessarily know what you're going to like or not until you do it. I know I've been surprised many, many times throughout my career when I've just like taken an opportunity to follow something I was curious about or explore a new population. So that was a really good point. Thank you for that, Moira.
I'll tell you, the older I get, the more I enjoy being wrong.
Yes. So, what is next for arts and health in general, a bit more broadly? That can include arts and health in the military or kind of the field. What do you all see coming next? Whoever would like to answer this one.
I can jump in. So I think that one major opportunity is workforce infrastructure. And, I have been extremely passionate about this. Moved to DC last year at a time where a lot of military connected families were experiencing quite a bit of culture shock and change in the labor landscape. A lot of we tell veterans or military communities that the lens through which they see the world beyond, duty in the civilian world is service. And the truth is that, veterans and they're a lot more than that. I think that because the arts are so transformative to healing and to longing. The other component that also must be a part of this, does art allow someone to feel self-actualized? How do we arrive to, yes, healing, but what does flourishing look like in our community? What does fulfillment look like in our community? Those things are super important. And career pathways, economic mobility, that's a very important part of the conversation. We cannot be whole if we're not stable. We cannot feel confident if we don't see ourselves as valuable. So I think that for me, what's next is, okay, the work is amazing. And we know that the ecosystem is one that allows people to thrive. Well, how do we push that to the next level? How do we make sure that our practitioners also share those experiences and that pathways are open so that we are learning how to engage veteran communities, meeting them where they are, but also bringing them along, allowing them to be contributors.
That's great. Thank you. Go ahead.
I will say the field in general. So I'm the conference co-chair for NOAA. Last year, NOAA was in New York City, and we saw more than twice the number of submissions for people to present. We had over 225 submissions for 45 presentation slots. This year, it is not in New York City. So we thought, we're going to see a decrease. We really haven't seen a significant decrease. So, we're on fire, right? This is hot stuff. And I think we're so accustomed to coming into a room saying, do you have space for us here? We own this room, right? And we need to be prepared. We need to act like we own it. Like this is it. This is it. So whatever that looks like for everybody, I would encourage you to embrace it because it's a wonderful, hard fought.
Thank you for that. And Bill, I think you had some NEA things you wanted to share. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with all of that. And I think maybe there's two ways for me to look at what's next, both, from a framing of within military. It's been a really interesting ride since 2011 when we started thinking about this, and it was such a different world. When we started our conversations with the National Intrepid Center for Excellence up at Walter Reed, we were in the middle. We didn't even know if we'd reached the middle yet of the longest wars in our history. And there were some very urgent, perplexing problems associated with TBI, PTSD, and associated psychological health conditions that were the signature wounds and the invisible wounds. And they were wicked problems for a traditional, medical system to respond to. And lo and behold, I think one thing we've learned over that time is that the arts can play a very important role in an integrative care model. Now that we're no longer at war, I think one of the things that we can be doing now is thinking about how that gets normalized in healthcare for military, not just people coming back from theater, but how is this part of your well-being, strategy in life? And how does that contribute to full force readiness in the military and successful life transitioning for veterans? I think those are like two long-term goals that we're now sort of settling into in the long term. And then one of the big takeaways for me in experiencing this kind of collaboration with military and veteran agencies and people is how urgent issues confronting the military has accelerated medical innovations across our nation's history. So ambulance systems didn't exist until the Civil War, and now they're practically in every community in the world. And you can pick any, penicillin in World War II or landmines and IEDs leading to breakthroughs in prosthetics that allows people to compete at Olympic levels. And I think the issue that we're seeing now is that behavioral health and mental health can be successfully addressed when you have the arts as part of the integrated solution. And that has potential to spill out more broadly to societal benefit in other areas. I think especially areas where there's some trauma occurring, so disaster impacted areas. individuals and communities who are going through things collectively can be building back a stronger and more resilient community when they're using the arts as part of that strategy. And I think, there's other areas in our agency that we're looking at. It's certainly a very different set of guidelines and priorities now as opposed to 2012. We have listed as priorities in our funding, there's a priorities page, and supporting creative arts therapies and other arts and health activities that can contribute to health and well-being of individuals and communities is language that's called out at the top of our priority section. So that's coming in lots of different ways. And we're learning from people who are taking our funding and showing us how they can contribute to these health and well-being aims through the arts. And then our strategic plan also has that listed as a very prominent number 2 goal in our strategic plan, is how we can be leveraging the arts to support health and well-being for individuals and communities across the nation. So I think what's next is much more activity. It definitely feels like there's we're on the cusp of arts and health, which can include creative arts therapies or community engagement, or all of the continuum of things in between. I think are becoming more and more recognized and understood. It's almost conventional wisdom now that it can be a key component to healthy living. It's really going to be interesting to see over the next 12 years, what this subject sounds like. It's like exercise. I often feel like it's like exercise science in the 70s. We've reached a point now where any exercise, we all know it's good, and we know it's good for all these different reasons. And I think arts and health is becoming a much more better understood and embraced concept. And the way that's going to be delivered and carried out over the coming years is going to be really interesting to watch.
Thank you, Bill. Michelle, did you want to share something with the group before we do our Q&A today?
Yeah. Thank you, guys. First, I want to thank our panelists, and we'll be right back with you for a few questions from the audience. And all you attendees, feel free to start chatting in the Q&A function, and you can ask your questions there, and we'll loop right back to those. I'm going to go ahead and share a quick presentation about the Center for Arts and Medicine and our graduate programming that we offer here. Let me pop that up for us. Sharing that now. So we have apologize. All right. So at UF, we have graduate programs in the field of arts and health that cover the Master of Arts in Arts and Medicine, a graduate certificate in arts and medicine, and a combination BA to MA program. Yeah. I'm going to go through it a little bit different today. So for what you should know about our program is that our program is completely asynchronous, 100% online and in your community. Courses are not self-paced, and our assignments have regular deadlines. You can access it anytime during the week, and it's a cohort-based program with peer interaction. Faculty office hours are offered, and our faculty are available to meet in real time. If you're considering an MA in Arts and Medicine, it's a 35 credit hour program. You can complete it in 2 to 3 years, and it includes core courses, electives, practicum, and a final capstone project. The tuition is $25,000, and it includes no out-of-state fees, so you're welcome to move around as part of our program as well. There is financial aid and scholarships available, and the GI Bill benefits do apply to our program. If you're looking at our graduate programs, we also offer a graduate certificate in arts in medicine. So our graduate certificate is 12 credit hours and can be completed in 10 months or 3 semesters. It includes core courses and a practicum, and the tuition for that is $8,079. There are, again, no out-of-state fees, and the GI Bill benefits do apply. We look at this as an accelerated option for earning a professional credential. When you're considering your options, our graduate certificate does transfer into credits for the MA in Arts and Medicine. We also offer a combination degree for our Bachelor and Master's of Arts and Medicine. So this is where you can complete your bachelor's using 12 credit hours of our master's program to complete your bachelor's degree. This applies to UF students that are pre-health, public health, music, biology, chemistry, microbiology and cell science, or psychology. To apply to our program, you would use a personal statement, letters of recommendation, a CV, resume. Your official transcripts are needed to complete admission, but you can apply with unofficial transcripts. You would need to do a writing sample and a portfolio for MA students. Portfolios are optional for certificate and combination students. There is no GRE needed, and you can apply now for fall 2026, and applications must be submitted by July 1st. I just want to point out that you are part of the Gator Nation with our program. The University of Florida is a premier public land and sea grant R1 research university. We are consistently ranked among the top public universities in the nation, and the UF Center for Arts and Medicine is one of the first programs in the field, and we are a leader in arts and health today. We have access to Career Connection Center, Gator Elite Network, and online libraries and research databases as a student in our program. And you also graduate as part of the UF Alumni Network. So if you're interested in learning more, you can reach out at camadmissions@arts.ufl.edu, and you can find us on all social media platforms. And I'm going to stop my share and get to the really fun part of your questions for our panelists now. So when I see that we have a question asking about speaking more to the community-based engagement, supporting with grant process and what that looks like. And then what are you looking for in those organizations? And I see that Heather shared some information about Creative Forces community grant programs here. Does anyone else want to talk anything more about grants processes and applying?
Yeah, specific to Creative Forces community engagement grants, I'd mentioned that usually around July 4 this year, it's going to be the week after we announce the next round of grants. The next opportunity to apply will be around Veterans Day. So we release the guidelines for the next round around Veterans Day. And then there's, from November to the middle of January is the time that you have to submit. The deadline's usually around January 15th. But if you just Google Creative Forces Community Engagement Grants, it should bring you to two links that I think would be useful just to understand the background if you want to start thinking. Partnerships are required, so it's better just to be thinking early. We had heard a great example from Kimberly earlier where the grant application gave the opportunity or the excuse to pick up the phone and say, hey, VA, we've been kind of wanting to partner on something. What about this? So if you, again, Creative Forces Community Engagement Grants, one landing page at the National Endowment for the Arts will just give you a whole background of the program and examples of some of the work that we're doing, impact narratives that are both videos and written stories about some of the projects that we've supported. And then the Mid-America Arts Alliance is the actual partner who administers the grants. So the guidelines and everything are there. Even though they're not reposted for the next round, you can see the guidelines from last year. If they change, they're not going to change much, and it'll give you an opportunity to kind of wrap your mind around what kind of a project you might want to do. We've had over 200 applications this year. So there's a lot of capacity out there to support military folks through the arts, and certainly invite anyone to take a look at the grant program. And if there's questions, the program manager's email is on that site, and he's available. Matt Elmore is his name. He's available for technical support. But again, that'll be in November. But for inspiration, stay tuned for the announcement of the next round. It is, for me, really one of the most inspiring things that I am in the great position to be able to enjoy is every year when that round of grants is announced, it's just mind-boggling how much cool effort and how many cool things are happening out there to support the military.
And then, Bill, I have a question. Do applicants for this have to be nonprofits?
So I'd mentioned partnerships are required. The applicant needs to be eligible for NEA funding, and that does typically mean 501c3, or you could be a city or a tribal entity, et cetera. But the partnerships can involve individual artists. It can often it involves veteran service organizations or VFWs or legions or military support programs like Blue Star Families. And for-profit entities who want to get engaged in this work are certainly eligible to be a partner. They can't be the applicant. The money needs to flow through an eligible entity. But the subcontracting within any project can be anything, really.
Awesome. I'm going to take just I'm going to just take a moment to note that we also have on this call, Linda Steele has joined us. She's the director over at the UF Collegiate Veteran Success Office here on campus. And if you have questions for her, that we welcome those questions in the chat as well. I'm going to ask, we have the question, I am the creative aging manager with Silver Kite Community Arts. This year, we're working with 4 Washington State veterans homes, training teaching artists to work with veterans in skilled nursing facilities. Do you have any guidance around working in these communities? Does anyone want to pop on with that?
I will say that NASA, the National Assembly of State Arts Agencies, just issued a white paper on a project that I was a part of, implementing arts and health programs and creating a professional learning community. And the topics that were of pretty consistent interest to people included creative aging. I mean, it's another one of these very hot topics. A lot of people are looking at it, even from a NOAA perspective, right? This experience of having a loved one with dementia, being a caregiver of someone with dementia. So I would look at that white paper. Again, NASA, NASAA, and your state arts agencies often, are great resources to look to.
I'll also jump in. Actually, our arts and medicine program grew out of our Aging Creatively program that we started in 2011. And so we work with HUD subsidized senior living facilities in addition to healthcare facilities. So I'm not sure what specific questions you might have, but you are welcome to email me and I'm happy to help. I'll put email in the chat.
And we do have on the NEA site, if you go into the Creative Forces landing page, there is a section called Publications. And there's one report that may be of interest for the person who asked the question. It's called Military and Family Needs Assessment and Literature Review, Considerations for Arts Providers and Creative Arts Therapists. And we published that report as we were about to announce the Community Engagement Grant Program. And it's sort of just a review and observations on how to understand and effectively serve military populations and military families. That said, I will also say that when we began these conversations, Fred was around for some of those initial summits that we were having around our clinical sites. And there was a lot of, I won't say anxiety around the need to develop military cultural competence was a theme that was discussed a lot. And I think in some ways it was great that people were sensitive and aware, of the need to be thinking about these things. But it also at times seemed to be frightening people off because they didn't feel like they were trained or equipped to be in this space. And I think one thing that I think is a really helpful anecdote to just keep in mind is, in my view, the most effective way to develop military cultural competency is to interact with military folks. If you develop a friendship and a relationship with people in the military, you'll start to get it. Certainly be sensitive and be aware, but don't be too intimidated, because it's, they're human beings who are capable of picking up what you're putting down in regards to if it's a trumpet or a paintbrush. And then just getting active in a room is probably the best way to feel better connected, which is really, the special power that you're bringing to the table.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Phil.
and for those people who want kind of a first dive into military cultural competency, born out of our Creative Forces initiative, we created a website called Vet Art Span, VETARTSPAN. And one of the elements in Vet Art Span is a military cultural competency curriculum that's really designed for folk who have not engaged with the military yet, have an opportunity to learn about the branches of service, some of the unique nuances. It's a good first dive as you prepare, as Bill says, to be involved. But we've had a really, really positive response from folks who get a chance to kind of hear from veterans talking about the services and their service. So that's another aid.
Awesome. We have another question I'm going to kind of summarize, but when we're talking about different experiences of veterans and how these are all diverse and their experiences vary a lot, how can arts and health build sustainable support while creating space for these complex stories of service, transition, and identity? We think about the complexity. I think a lot of that's kind of what we're talking about there, about like looking at better understanding folks. And
what I want to say, Michelle, is that life is complex. So it's just another layer. I mean, I think the bigger thing is there are a lot of presumptions, and it's been my experience, whether you're talking about relationship with veterans and the community, or if you're talking about traveling to different parts in the world. It's the things, if we give ourselves permission to listen to each other's stories, then we come to realize how much we have in common, or we get a better sense of where's the space that I can enter to care and to help. It's like this is a journey about doing that which is for the greater good. So what I would say to people is give yourself permission to release your presumptions based upon some movie that you saw or something that you think you know. You don't know what you don't know until you find out what it is. So, I mean, one of the most important things is to really be curious and to recognize we're all participating in a human experience, right? Some of us have another layer, but there are many, many layers. And so just welcome the opportunity with an open mind and an open heart to engage. There's so much energy out there in the world that is pushing us away from each other, right? So we have to step into the reality that the only way I can really know is to be curious in mind and heart, and it's really, really important to understand, don't come into the conversation, we don't need to be fixed. You know what I mean? This is not about fixing. You know what I mean? It's not. It's about scripting a new storyline that includes everyone's understanding. We just need to practice getting back to that. Yeah.
I thank you, Fred. And I think at this point, unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up because of time. We'll spend a few minutes answering questions in the Q&A off screen before we close out. But I want to just take this moment to thank our panelists for your time today. Thank you for joining us for today's Path to Practice. I hope these conversations continue and that we get to meet back up again soon and continue these great interactions. I thank you today.